Welcome back to another chapter of my grandmother's life. Now, you'll notice I'm not in my normal location. I am actually in Texas at the LTK conference with Jessica. She has been nominated for an award for the Cooking Creator of the Year. So we're down here this week, and I thought, what a beautiful location to share a couple of chapters of my grandmother's life. Now, I do apologize. I've picked up a bit of a cold, so my voice is a little rough. So bear with me if I have to take a break and sip on some hot tea. Now, last time we saw how canning and clever ideas like drilling a hole in the floor to drain the icebox kept the house running. In this chapter, we learn how Julia will face one of the most difficult challenges of her life. This chapter is titled Diphtheria Strikes. After a miscarriage in 1926, Julia became critically ill with septicemia. She also suffered from diphtheria. Dr. Proud found she had a high fever and observed the telltale yellowish-white mucus layer over the back of her throat. Upon gentle probing, he found the layer was firmly attached and bled easily. She was so weak she couldn't even lift her head off the pillow. Although almost unheard of now, diphtheria unfortunately was most common, particularly in the rural districts. Alex knelt by her bed, put his head on his arms, and cried. This was the only time the children ever saw him in tears. He begged Doctor to do everything he could to make her well, and was told she was too ill to remain at home. He was well aware of the possible complications. The membrane restricted her breathing, and the toxins could cause heart failure or paralysis. Professional care in a hospital was the only solution, but as health insurance was unheard of in those days, Dr. Proud explained that the state hospital at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor would care for her as they did all cases like hers. Alex was relieved that they would take care of his Julia, and Dr. Proud made all the arrangements. Transported to Ann Arbor by ambulance, she was placed in strict isolation in a private room. The nurses and doctors all wore gowns and masks and gloves when caring for her, and washed their hands when they came out. Everything coming out of the room was double-bagged and sterilized before being used again. Lucille was to learn later that this hospital was at the forefront in the battle to control these highly contagious diseases. At first, she was too ill to pay attention to her surroundings, but as she improved and the fever began to subside, she began to feel lonely, in such isolation with no one to see but these masked figures caring for her. Remembering her prayers, she prayed when she woke up. She prayed when someone came into the room. She prayed when there was nothing else to do but pray. The prayers, the medical attention, the excellent care by the nurses, and her will to live all worked together to gradually heal her throat. The toxins cleared out of her system, her temperature returned to normal, and she was at long last on the road to recovery. When no longer contagious, she was transferred to a ward where there were lots of people and lots of things going on. Back at home, Alexander, not Alexander Sr., Alexander, my Uncle Alexander the Younger, took over the cooking, washing, and babysitting. Although only 9 or 10 years old, he did a marvelous job of keeping things in order. Lucille remembers eating a lot of fried potatoes during those months. Alex would drive the family the 30 miles to Ann Arbor about once a month to visit their mother. Of course, this was in the days before any wonder drugs, and while in isolation, her principal therapy was good food and rest, and as a result, she began to regain her strength. While in the hospital, some gypsy patients taught her to tell fortunes using cards and tea leaves. She became very good at it and was considered a fae. That is, she had premonitions about things that would actually happen. Altogether, she was in the hospital for a year, and during that time, both Lucille and Eddie had the mumps. So it was quite a rough time, not only for Julia, but for the family on West Road as well. When Lucille entered the University of Michigan School of Nursing in 1940, it was found that she was a diphtheria carrier. She was placed in isolation, perhaps the same room that Julia had been in years before, and treated with massive doses of penicillin. Within a week, she was retested. 3 negative throat cultures were required, and in 10 days, she was released and allowed to return to her training classes. This was a frightening chapter in my grandmother's life, but it also showed her strength and resilience. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you following along, and if you've missed any parts of this story, I've created a playlist called My Grandmother's Life where you'll find all previous chapters.